Okay, the story so far. Things opened up with the French forces marching and pushing the coalition down behind this Place River. And the Austrians kind of trying to circle around and getting chased and battered on their way to hook up with the rest of the coalition army of Bohemia there. They left a couple of artillery back there. They couldn't make it. Not sure what I'm doing with it. Have some units off map that routed that I'll be able to bring back on because I make up rules. Then we had sort of a large pause while some French reinforcements start coming in, Marmont's corps and parts of the Imperial Guard. Napoleon's on the scene, but he's kind of pinging back and forth, getting very little done. So mostly Murat's been leading the attack. We paused the last video. Basically, the entirety of the last video was resting and recuperation. And it's rather short, it turns out, but whatever. But the attack's about to restart with Augereau and Lauriston launching attacks on the Austrians. Victor and Poniatowski are holding their position, watching the Russian-Prussian forces here. The Russians got battered pretty heavily. The Prussians are in good shape. The Austrians are weak to begin with and are fatigued. So they seem like a good target right now. And then we're going to be writing orders for Marmont and probably doing something that he can't complete in the time allotted because the days are short right now. So right now we're on the 4:30 turn. We basically have 3 turns to pursue this attack here, and then night falls. It's October, so the days are relatively short. We still get an early start though, so that's kind of cool. All right, and we'll start playing at some point. The French assault begins. Augereau crossing. Well, first thing that happened was Pujol sent a cav charge in, created a couple of squares here, 3 of them actually. Okay, well, if they're going to defend everywhere, they smash into their disordered units. The Austrian cav too far away to really do much help. I'm finding cav a lot less useful defensively in this game, largely because there's enough room to maneuver around. We had in some of the previous games cluttered terrain, whatnot, and the cav could be kind of channeled within a fairly close range, plus a lot of units in a small amount of territory. Here I've got tons and tons of space, so the countercharges don't really work as a defensive measure, which means if I want to defend with my cav, I kind of have to throw it right against the enemy units in a way that I haven't really gotten the hang of yet, in part because of what I'd seen before. Lauriston coming across here. Now, he's potentially got some artillery that's going to be plinking his flanks as he cuts across there. But it's sort of the only way to get to where I was going. For the other units here, Napoleon trying to gather some stragglers, and these guys are still resting. Marmont has accepted his orders, but he can't take them underway yet. Mortier hasn't even gotten his orders. He gets them in like an hour, but I can move forward a little bit from there. And Drouot, I did not give him any orders at all. I figure he's going to, basically what I gave as order is Barmont to be, I think, back here somewhere. And Mortier to position himself over here. It's going to take him into the night to get there. And I'm probably going to put Druid across here where I think the main Austrian force is going to come in. And Prussian maybe, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where things are coming in. And that's kind of cool, and I don't know. In some cases it can create issues that are not necessarily positive. Got to check my mail. And the French cav kind of failed, not terribly. It just bounced off those disordered units, but didn't do anything. And likewise, I've got like 3 brigades, I guess, slamming into that square. That should be really good. Both attacks were like 2 to 1, but that also failed to do anything. At least I forced the Austrians to take the morale check, but they did not fail, barely, barely. And that's about it. I've got some recovery to do, like 1, well, maybe 3 units. The unit over there and whatever I can muster. It might be 4. Marat too. The clutter of the battlefield caused some issues. So the Austrians are trying to react to what's going on here. And one thing is I inched a square up on some cav and the cav blew away. That's these guys. Another was I moved some infantry up into here, and without noticing that Kellerman's cav was in position to countercharge, and it charged up the hill and broke my advance. It was on the 2 to 3 table. I had a leader with the Austrians, so it wasn't a terrible choice anyway, and it could have captured these guns had it worked. But instead, it ended up being another ugly episode over here on the Austrian side of things. Oh, I forgot to do anything with these cav in terms of charging or whatever, which is really kind of a pity. They are kind of defending a flank, but as the center falls apart, that's not going to mean much. We did do a melee over here, but that just increases the fatigue rating. Chased one of the units that was giving the French some local superiority over there out of the way. But things look pretty bad for the Austrians at this point. I'm just on rallying and whatnot, and there is nothing I can rally over on the Austrian side. Straggler recovery has made the Russians actually end up well over their demoralization level, so they no longer have that penalty. So here's the thing, and I was playing with this in my head before. Since they achieved the improvement on it, normally they wouldn't be susceptible to the kind of disorganization, mass disorganization that happens when they get a demoralized result, when the army or corps becomes demoralized again. But what I'm going to do is, when the new day starts, if they manage to clear this, they just have cleared it, and once again they're eligible for that kind of routing type behavior, for whatever it's worth. Again, making shit up, but however you want to look at that. Sometimes I feel like, I ought to just play the rules as written. But I don't know. Cases like this, I feel like they weren't adequately considered over the length of the campaign, which is to say, okay, maybe a 2-day battle, that wouldn't apply, but, this is 6 days going on. It's enough of a campaign that, like, there's time for these units to reorganize, get themselves back together. but in getting themselves back together, they're still kind of more fragile than they should be. So, you know, I just don't feel like it's right that they shouldn't have that break effect. Now, how terrible is it? I don't know. It's not that huge a penalty. It's only units that have taken damage, and of course it won't be during that day, it'll be any damage on them at all, that are in good order that make the check. So it's not a devastating blow in general, although with the Austrians it's more of one if they surpass it. And I give them a check too. I'll come back if they're a problem. So what is this, 5 o'clock turn, 1700, opens up with Pujols is going to rest. He's tired. But Kellerman launched a charge, because Pujols is only facing Cav. Cav versus Cav, I'm always, my feeling is always, yeah, that doesn't do much. You know, you kind of bounce off each other, you both take hits, and it's better to deploy the artillery or something and scare the Cav away. And use your own Cav to defend, to defend, which of course is only really applicable when you're looking at the light Cav, and with the option rule, because of their extra range. The regular Cav, I mean, it can hold an end of a line and prevent an outflank and stuff, but it really doesn't do that much. But anyway, Kellerman managed to scare away a bunch of Austrians who tried to, and failed, to make squares. He took some fire coming in, but it didn't really hurt him, and now he's going to plow into, well, he picked on a leader. That might not be so wise. Since I went dancing last night on a Thursday and took today off, yeah, I thought I would get some playing in. I'm basically playing a half turn just to, you know, keep myself honest or something. And just so wiped out after dancing. It was a glorious night, but yeah. What happened was the namesake of the bar that used to hold the dance that I came back for, something reopened under the same name. And they're trying to maintain that same flavor and style in a different location, but it kind of has it. It's a little smaller, less people showed up by far, but it was still fairly crowded. But it was nice because the floor was just wonderful. Kind of a wooden polished floor, which is just great for dancing on. I'm used to kind of a linoleum type thing, which is, yeah, it's got its advantages too, but different span of music, same DJs as I was used to, and it was just so cool to be like a different crowd of people, like because of the different night, because of the different location, whatever, and somewhat different songs than were coming. Instead of just being limited to 80s, it was like 70s through 90s. So I was targeting non-80s songs. They still played a lot, but I mean, that's where the majority of their collection is. But it was awfully damn cool. But I'm worn out, and now I got to go dancing again tomorrow, and I got to go shopping this weekend too. So I'm not sure about the shopping. I found that bag in there, in that pot is, I found some food in the garbage. There's a place that I look for. I hate the food that I get out of it, but it's like extra food that I can grab and carry home after dancing, which, you know, can serve an extra week without shopping or something. But I don't like the taste, so it's not really good. Anyway, back to the game. So Kellerman's charge was successful. Most of the attacks here, I didn't do any other melees because I cleared everybody out with fire. You can see Austrians routing. This fire was ineffectual. Forgot to roll this morale check here. Yeah, that'll work. Puchol is recovering a unit. Murat and Victor worked on, and Poniatowski for that matter, I found some damaged units of his. I think they got in the way of some artillery here when it got set up. And, recovering strength points and building themselves up. And then Marmont moving on, etc., all the way up, Druet, and then Oudinot is showing up now. That is the end of the line for reinforcements for today. So I'm going to start setting up tomorrow's reinforcements. I'm a little worried that there might be late in the day reinforcements tomorrow, which would cause issues. Yeah, it looks like there are. But I want to get at least the morning's worth down so I can see them. That's only Nansuti's cav. The Austrians come in fairly late, or the Prussians or whatever. Austrian Reserve Corps, Russian and Prussian Guards. These are all going to be coming in from here. That's something to keep in mind in terms of, yeah, I'm probably aware there's probably scouts. I'm not going to be shocked by this. I don't know enough about the history. Somebody had suggested that that maybe I wouldn't know, that there's something I shouldn't know about or something along those lines. And, I've learned to be careful. You know, the first time I played Terrible Swift Sword and Doubleday came wandering on way out of position as far as I was concerned. Like, basically in a position where he could threaten the Confederates, but they could really, like, send a force down and just wipe him out. It was just kind of like, whoa, what's this shit? And both sides were just totally confused by it. Since then, it's never really been a big deal. I figure out a way through. But yeah, so there's basically 2 more corps coming in for the coalition tomorrow. But I've got 2 cav, 1, 2, 3 cav and 2 regular corps coming in for the French. You know, I'm really wondering. So if I was playing this game with the rules as written, these few routed units wouldn't be coming back. Okay, that's not that big a deal. But if I can get most of that Austrian army running, and I feel like I kind of can if I've got today. There's not much left to today. But if I've got the next day, the next morning to do it, I feel like I can pretty much collapse this or send it into a really less comfortable position than it's in. And it seems like I'm still going to have numerical superiority on the next day. Which, if that's the case, I just feel like I'm able to defeat the coalition piecemeal here in a way that historically wasn't possible. Now, the fact that I'm allowing units to rout off the map or retreat from the map and come back, which I feel is historically accurate over the course of the size of this campaign, then, well, you know, at least these forces, whatever I do drive off the map, will be available in some form or another. But they're going to be so butchered that it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. So, yeah, I don't know. And if an army's actually destroyed, I'm really kind of iffy about that. Like, should its routed units probably aren't going to come back in that case. And nobody is destroyed yet, or none of the corps are destroyed yet. So at least there's that. The Russians are the closest. I haven't looked to see how bad. Yeah, Clenau is still in pretty good shape if you just look at the casualties. I turned off most of the lights, so I don't know how visible things are. All right, that is it for today. Puny little attempt, but whatever. We enter into the last turn before night falls. And yeah, the common post-dancing malaise is on me. It's weird. I mean, I don't feel depressive, but I'm enjoying... Well, first of all, the Ukraine thing, captivates my attention. It's very hard to break myself away from watching news reports on that. But even when I did, then I'm like, ooh, what I'd really like to do is curl up and read, And yeah, I mean, that's just how it always ends up. I just don't want to do active things at all afterwards. It's like I've spent so much of myself. But anyway, we got a couple of things going on. The Austrians have pretty much been driven back across the river, and I got to decide what the fuck to do. I didn't realize it's the last turn before night falls. I would actually have time to try to reorganize them. They've got a problem, though. They just went over, when I count routed units, their limit. So I got possibly a couple of units I got to check. Everything's mostly routed anyway. But let's see, 70 has no damage against it. And what is this? 66 and 67. Wow, that's a big unit. Okay, so 67 has to make a morale check, and it's probably an 8 drops to 7, drops to 5, but we succeed. So we've gotten past our problem, and my first thought was, they're going to get routed off the map. I better start moving what's still functioning from the Army of Bohemia because I don't want the Russians to get rolled up. But maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense now. No matter what, the person I need to give orders to is Klenau, if anyone. So Schwarzenberg's gone to him. Part of it is I want to kind of look and see what the terrain looks like over here to make my decisions. Over here in the places that all right, so this is where the rest of the army is coming in next. And the question really is, what is my best defensive structure for this? Am I best off on the hills, letting the enemy come through the woods? Honestly, if the enemy can go through the woods and come out, that's no good. I'd have to be right at the edge of the woods, which I don't think is an accurate historical situation. But that's where I get my advantage of fire on them, is if they're in defensive terrain, yes, they get a defensive bonus, but I get full fire, they get one coming out. Another option, of course, though, is to just, take the highland. I still have enough artillery to hold that. I think it looks more appealing for me to try to defend this region than to stay down here. But I'm not sure, because then I'll be directing Napoleon's attention to exactly where the reinforcements are going to come in. And if I stay over here, there's some opportunity to maybe cause a problem. On the other hand, I'll have kind of the interior lines type situation with additional corps filtering in as the day grows late. So maybe a countermarch makes sense. Maybe not. I don't know. But I've got some time to figure that out before before the Austrians have to write their orders. Up here on the French side of the 1730 turn, Mortier accepted his orders. for what that's worth. And both Pujol and Kellerman are launching a couple of charges, just pursuits really, although these guys smashed into something that was an ordered unit, but failed its square check. Left with the conundrum now. This is Sunday. I'm supposed to go shopping today, but with my food find, kind of don't really have to, and I'm like, wow, that food is so bad I may lose weight eating it, just because I don't want to eat as much, and it's a little harder to make something filling. On the other hand, it means misery of eating that crap, and only that crap, more or less, and digging into maybe some stocks elsewhere, and maybe most of all, not having the pleasant walk, because I've kind of planned on it all day. So I think I'm going to end up going shopping. And then I'm left with the question of, well, do I take my backpack because it's going to be a light load? Or is the cart still easier? I mean, if I went with a tiny backpack, it would be fine, but I have to go with my military one. Anyway, because if I go, I will be getting enough stuff. And then it becomes more just a harder job to carry it. The cart is pretty easy, especially when light. Anyway, back to the game. I'll start moving some pieces some more. End of the French turn. Cavalry charges, largely successful. Kellerman lost a strength point. Pujols, though, destroyed the entire force that he was facing. And Lorstone gave up his orders. He was just forming a defensive line north of the river. Magdeburg's already captured. It's just a matter of, did I want to get in a traffic jam with Augereau? Augereau's orders are to go forward. He's probably not going to do that either. We're probably going to hold off here and let the coalition slip all over the river. In fact, some of them are routing. They're just going to go over. This is the only formed unit they have left. Bunch of routing units from fire, from whatever. A little bit of fire going back and forth between the Russians and the French as they deploy. Of course, all the reinforcements coming on. Napoleon went to go help Victor, recovering stragglers. His force is going to be... So, if you play with the straggler recovery role, because units can recover all the way up to full strength, it's not that hard for a unit to just kind of bivouac and, get itself back into strength. And that's really what's happening here. Now, you're not going to recover anything that died, though. So, like what somebody was mentioning about command and colors, there is a reason to destroy a unit. The recovery rates and the fact that you're fighting and the percentage that really were stragglers versus actual casualties, especially for fire combat, for the most part, it doesn't introduce too much of a problem. The model doesn't work if you try to extend it too far, though. And my fear is that this battle may have enough periods of this game, because there's really multiple battles around Leipzig, may have enough lag that the system will start to deteriorate around the edges. Same thing with the Waterloo quad, where, this is a system that's designed for singular battles, and those fatigue rules, it's just a matter of how much more do you want to tinker with them and twist the nuts on them to get it a little bit better. How much more do you have to nail it down to get something that accurately portrays stuff on other situations? And you'd have to add all kinds of special rules to do that. That's just not what this design is about. This design is meant to give you a lot of what I see as the important parts of Napoleonic combat at kind of the least cost that they can possibly be provided. but that does mean a fair amount of abstraction is going on. You don't have the same kind of abstraction, really, when you look at like the Napoleon at Waterloo type series. You don't feel like the system breaks down in the same sort of ways or whatever. It's a different type of abstraction there. Here, the abstractions cause the individual subsystems to be a little bit more in doubt. There, the abstraction is at such a high level that there just really aren't any subsystems. It's just, it feels like not too different from, World War II operational style games in terms of how the battle is judged. Yeah, there are some tweaks around the edges, etc., that make it more Napoleonic than it would otherwise be, and that's fine. But my love of tactical battles is generally when they give enough detail that I can see how the units are actually operating and everything. Not just, ooh, can I do a strength point comparison and get on a CRT and roll a die? To me, that's just an abstraction level that makes it so that all warfare is the same, really, which it just is not at the tactical level. So, yeah. Austria is going to be the Bohemian army, but the Austrian corps, for the most part, is faced with an interesting challenge. I sent Schwarzenberg over there with the idea that he would start rolling the army towards this direction. I am not sure how I feel about that. So half my army is routing off the board, or half the corps is routing off the board here. If I move over here, they're going to be far from the forces that are routing. I'm actually considering giving them orders to get the fuck off the board and come in later, because that unit is just so beat up. But on the other hand, the units that stay on the board will get a better opportunity to recover forces if they're not attacked. So I'm torn between leaving the board completely or trying to set up a defensive line down here where I don't think the main attack will be. But it might be, right? We got all these forces. Where are they going to hit? They're going to hit over there. On the other hand, I may need what little is left of that Austrian corps to hold this whole thing, because I got half a day before the additional forces from the Army of Bohemia start arriving, where I've got to face everything. I don't know. That sounds nasty to me. One nice thing is I have cleared all the reinforcements off the board and we're almost at night, so I can probably put additional forces on the track beyond the morning troops. Maybe not the whole day though, because there's stuff that is showing up at 2100 and stuff like that tomorrow. A good picture of, first of all, the troop inequities that we'll maintain through tomorrow. McDonald's Corps is about the same size as Hamburg. Bertrand's Corps, okay, it's not the size or power of the Russian Imperial Guard and the Prussian Guard, but throw in a couple of Cav Corps, and I feel like the French are still getting the advantage. Plus, those Cav Corps come in fairly early. The rest of it, this situation that's been going well for the French with about half their forces that are on the board fighting, is going to be even more increasingly, in favor of the French. Which means I think that it's going to be a hard job to hold this territory. And what we're really seeing is something that didn't happen historically, but a strong, strong push towards trying to defeat the Army of Bohemia before the army of Silesius shows up, before all these other allies show up, getting a concentration of force that Napoleon manages to get onto this, area, sector of the campaign as a whole, but then using it adequately, which is something that, we'll see. We'll see if it makes a difference, because it still is numerically a much, much worse battle for the French. A lot of their units are much, much smaller than the coalition forces. Which, what does that mean? Well, if you destroy a unit, it's gone forever. A big unit that can recover could get back up to almost full strength if it's given enough time to rest. And there's plenty of time in this scenario so far. We'll see. We'll see how much, because here's the thing. What's on the line right now has to fight through most of tomorrow. There'll be reinforcements late in the day, right in the area that I'm fighting in. But, those could be suffering, having units retreating back through them or whatever, because I really am tending towards defending the area that they're in more in a more dedicated fashion. I think trying to hold here will just be destroyed, because this is what the French are poised to attack. And so, if I move, I force the French to move a little bit, and it may disrupt their attack plans a little bit. That's the way the order systems tend to work. If I wasn't playing with the order systems, it would be fairly easy to react to the moves, because everything's clean and visible on the map. I don't remember the rules for the dummy counters. I mean, they wouldn't work for me solo, but I don't remember them being particularly strong. What they could do was, you could create like a fake core or something like that. And, you could create a feint, but you couldn't kind of hide most of the forces you have on the board. You just don't have enough counters for that. But anyway, like I said, I didn't study them too much, and I certainly have never played with them. I kind of like the Brigade series rules for hidden movement, which are like, well, if the enemy can't see you, you leave the map and you start plotting your movement, and then you show back up when you're within line of sight again. That may be a little bit too extreme, because there are scouts and things. Completely losing track of forces should be pretty hard to do. But if you have some small cav units or whatever, you can throw them out to scout, especially independent units that could do that. And you could kind of do something that's more like the historical reality, rather than focusing only on, keeping your battle forces in the play. And that helps with games like, with something like a Gettysburg type situation where, Stuart wasn't around, so the Confederates didn't have enough cavalry to both, to scout everywhere, essentially. After agonizing, I decided I'm going to try to move whatever I can of the Austrians over to here. I know it's problematic, but we'll see. But right now, that's basically this cav. The rest of the Austrian corps is all either routing or one unit is disordered. And that's not, the routers are going to be off the map. And, I'm going to basically be able to maybe hold a little bit of this. Schwarzenberg got together with the Russian and Prussian corps commanders, and they're having a powwow. I'm going to get orders to move over there, because I can issue 2 orders each per coalition commander, if I recall correctly. The French are a little different. Napoleon can give his 3, but his two sort of sub-army commanders, whatever, Murat and Ney, are each allowed one. Now, I don't know how much sense that makes, but clearly, if you're doing one map scenarios, you need to have a commander on the field who can give orders. And if you want to mirror all of that, well, you have to have adequate sub-commanders who can give orders within regions of the map. The coalition has tons of armies. The French have one big one. That one big one would be very poorly served if Napoleon could only give orders. So what it gives it is a flexibility to kind of create other armies. If you wanted to do this reasonably, I think you would add a little bit more to it, which is like, Murat should not be able to give orders if Napoleon is down in that general area. But that adds more complexity again, and I don't know, these guys have a certain level of initiative to them, Ney and Murat, that maybe allows them to enhance Napoleon's command abilities in the area. The only problem is, if Napoleon's thinking of one plan and Murat's thinking another, there's nothing that represents that kind of situation. So they end up enforcing Napoleon's grand command scheme. Of course, that's across the board with the game. Oh, and there we go again. Hi. It is one of the problems with the level 4 command rules for this system, or the NBS type command system, which is just, one player is still devising the whole general command. The level 5 command system is the, hey, I don't remember if they have it fully in here, but it's something that's similar that I've seen in minis a lot, which is, this is your command, do it, play it how you want. And you can't follow, you shouldn't be asking advice from other players on your side and stuff like that. You might ask technical advice, if you're not used to the system, but you shouldn't be saying, well, should I charge here or something? No, that's your call. Where I've seen this best handled is that you can't give orders to other players except through something like the aide-de-camps here, where they ride around and send messages. And I think they're meant to be used that way under the level 5. But again, I don't read that. I read it once, long ago, maybe more times, but it's not something that I can play with. So, I just don't do it. That means nightfall is coming. Not a lot happened, some exchanges of fire. The French are actually at a disadvantage right now in the fire exchanges. The Russians have an artillery advantage here, and here there are no French artillery at all. I may want to back up, although at night there's no fire combat, so it probably isn't worth it. It's probably better to dress my lines and be prepared for an attack. What are the rules on night turns? Well, I went over these before, but now that we're entering them, normal movement, no cav charges, no fire. You can do melee with infantry, but only if they start the turn adjacent to the target. Rally is normal. If you don't move at all during the 4 turns of night, a unit will gain a step back, and it will also automatically rally, which of course won't work for routing units because they're still leaving. I could see making an argument that, they'd camp for the night or something. I don't buy that. They're routing. The basic game rules are they're destroyed. I want to be a little bit less harsh than that. So, but I also am not going to bend. I'm going to make them as hard to keep on the map as possible. But I think allowing them to return to the battlefield is really important, because otherwise this French strategy is so guaranteed to work. I mean, oh look, I knocked the Austrian corps off the map, a chunk of the Russian corps. I'll be able to devolve is smashing the shit out of what's on the map right now for half of tomorrow, it's pretty likely there won't be anything left of any of these corps. It'd be nice if they were able to return. But again, playing the basic game rules, you'd be seeing all this stuff just gone. I mean, this is all gone, right? Gone for good. Turn for the French is essentially a recovery turn. I do dress my line a little bit here, but for the most part, the units moving forward, Marmont, Marmont rested as well. Yeah, the units moving forward pretty much all just stopped, rested for a few hours, and what is it, 2 hours? It's like 3 hours. Which, just allows me a little bit more strategic flexibility in terms of when this move happens, it's going to throw the French off. If they ever write orders, and I kind of like to write orders overnight in a sort of semi-static position. So like at Austerlitz the second day, I wrote this whole complicated series of interlocking orders where units weren't ordered to move, this is in the NBS series, until, they were given orders to move to support another action, which meant that other action triggered everything at once, which kind of, it's not clear whether or not that's legal in that system, but I like to do things like that, to build up a set of interlocking orders so that everything works as clockwork the way that I predicted. And that's honestly how starting initial orders written kind of work in the campaign, is that you've got a bunch of accepted orders and you just engage with them. So with this, Napoleon would like to walk around, maybe gather some of his commanders and give them a set of orders to deal with the situation. But if he gives them those orders to deal with this situation, that's not what we're going to be facing when day breaks. And so everybody's going to have orders to like go cross the river and launch attacks and everything. And there'll be nothing there. And then I'll have to, issue new orders. By delaying and recovering some troops and whatnot, maybe I get to see a little bit of what the enemy's doing. I realized I made a bit of an error in the first night turn. I didn't mark somehow the units that have not moved. Not too concerned about these guys, they haven't taken any losses. But I know Victor and Poniatowski haven't moved. It's a little bit fuzzier here. For the most part, I think Lauriston has moved most of his units, but there are some that have not. Maybe a couple. And Augureau, again, he moved some, but not all. And that's going to make things more difficult. I guess I didn't write any orders this turn. I'm setting up for Murat to begin giving orders to these guys to, come across and do their thing, which those orders aren't, if I'm lucky, aren't going to be very, lucky for the coalition, aren't going to be very helpful, but they're probably not going to be too bad. I'll still be in a position to threaten the flank over here, depending on how they're written. Napoleon is beginning to think about orders to, take this high ground here, set up some artillery up there. Maybe the old guard should be doing that, but he's not heading over there to talk to them. I could write some orders that'll take time to get there, but that's kind of painful compared to running out ahead and then sending the orders forward. In fact, if you played with the aide-de-camps, just running him places takes the same amount of time as writing the orders. Now, Napoleon's a different case than like, Murat or Ney would be, in that Napoleon can write 3 orders a turn. So I could send orders out in 3 different directions and maybe not be able to hit 3 corps in the same way. But yeah, I wish I had brought, I was using little circle markers for various reasons. I don't remember what they were, disorders and whatnot, in some of the other games. So far, this game has plenty of counters. I should really, again, combine my counters from various games to make sure that I don't end up in those kind of problems. But this game has plenty of counters to handle the disruptions and whatnot. So I wasn't forced to get those little circles, and now I'm like, if I had marked the units that have not moved all night with little circles, it would be useful. Likewise, the Russians and Prussians haven't moved at all, essentially. But maybe a unit or 2 has, just to reorganize a little bit the positioning, a little bit of line dressing, whatever. And, it would be helpful to know which units are going to be able to recover because an extra strength point, if that's the case. But they're probably not going to because, well, their orders were just accepted last turn, and they should be up and moving, and those whole forces are going to be shifting, which, yeah. Hoping I have time to recover forces while the French are like, well, where did they go? Excuse me. Yeah. So, this is the situation at midnight. After the coalition forces start to disengage. And it's a whole lot easier to disengage in the middle of the night. We gotta move some of these people around. I should send the Tsar over there. He might actually rally one of those, but I'm not sure I want to even do so anymore. So what we have going on is... You should get moving too. Is most of the Austrian forces are just leaving the board. However, I do have a couple of cav, and I want to keep them associated, kind of like, I got the artillery back there. But I'm not sure that even makes sense. I'm beginning to have secondary concerns about this because there's no Austrian corps. I've got Austrian corps orders to get down here. There is no Austrian corps. There's a couple of cav. They would be helpful in defending things, but they also might be necessary for bringing these guys back on the board when they come. And I don't know what to do about that. I've also got these thoughts of like, well, could I detach and attach a unit, stuff like that. I seem to remember that the system allows for such rules. Maybe I shouldn't be looking at the standard game. Most games do allow for things like that, but this one may not. I don't recall anything about it because basically it would have to be under the order system, because without the order systems, at least the level 2, level 2, which integrates, level 1 is just leaders have a morale effect. Okay, so why are, level 2, and can be killed. Level 2 is standard command radiuses and such not, which is the first place where you might actually have the detachment type rules. But yeah, it becomes somewhat complicated. But I figured I could make something up and like say, hey, Schwarzenberg is, nominally in command of that cav, or can attach it to some other corps or something. The same way that we got some forces that are similar to that with the French, where like there's units from really one nationality or whatever that are attached to a core that really kind of weren't, but okay. And sometimes games will have, some of the games will have like two cores smashed together under one leader or something along those lines. Just because they've both been beaten up. We had that, I think, in, I'm not sure which one. May have been in Hanau. But yeah, I think it had to be Hanau. We had situation, which is the retreat from this situation. Normally I would do that after it, but I needed it as a refresher because it had been like a week or, it had been a couple of weeks since like I had played real games of this, both because of things like Agricola, but also because I'd done Siege of Danzig, which really doesn't feel as much like a Viva la Emperor game in a lot of ways. It uses many of the same rules, but it also uses the Art of Siege stuff. But, you know, if I can make shit up and whatever, that's fine, you know. But I'm beginning to think maybe I should just dispatch them, cancel those orders, and get everybody off the map. The cav can certainly run back. I'm beginning to think that that's the best answer of all. In fact, the cav doesn't even tire my units out. And then just get these guys limping off as fast as they can so they don't get picked off. Might actually, see, these guys are leaving so late, but if I further delay their entry, I can make up rules more to allow me to transit up to there. Which might make sense as well, and then reassociate with the artillery that I've left behind, or maybe give the artillery orders to get off the map, or whatever. But yeah, basically my core is split here and there, and I don't know what the map is like. You know, how big is this Universalis holes? Will it block? Are there roads, you know, cutting across somewhere further down? I make all that shit up, you know, for whatever case. I definitely don't have, you know, I've lost the Austrian corps. That's a third of my army, maybe. A little weaker, but of my army that's available on the board. And now I'm going to be defending a situation that's really not all that much more defensible than this. Although I think I'm going to defend on the ridgeline and then dropping back to this ridgeline as well. And just try to hold as much of that as I can, but it's not going to be pleasant. Okay, so Marat gives the orders that he was planning on giving, but, well, maybe different ones, but he was planning on giving orders here to Lorsel. But Napoleon, aware of these movements, writes orders to Victor and Poniatowski. Part because I want to recover units, I figured they'll probably follow their orders. Victor is going to shift over to here, and Poniatowski is going to support an assault that Victor is going to lead going through here. Marmont has no orders yet. I could have thrown him some orders too, but I'm willing to wait a little bit. However, he's setting up here. Now, if I were playing this not solo, things might be a little different. I might roll for an initiative check from Marmont to move him in here and prevent the Prussians and Russians from going. Similarly, these guys who have really lousy orders under the current situation, I would almost certainly want to march them down this road. But on what evidence, right? I mean, Marmont might have some evidence coming from here that Poniatowski is able to say, hey, there's movement going through the woods, maybe somebody should cover up. Mortier here, he's almost certainly not going to have any knowledge of what's going on. And this is one of the things with these really much larger games that I feel like, yeah, you know, you make the initiative check to see, hey, do they just cut off down there? Do they ignore their orders and whatnot? And that feels so unfair to do. But the God's eye view, if they were truly in like mental communion with Napoleon, they would do these things. And it's problematic. And in fact, if you were sitting here playing this multiplayer under the level 5 where everybody has their own orders, it still wouldn't be an unreasonable move to go marching down here, because you see what's happening here, something that he could not possibly be aware of. That's, to me, a troublesome factor. And I'm going to just sort of kludge and say, you know, like certain other things that just are unreasonable, I'm not going to allow that to happen. But it's an advantage to solo play to be able to make that kind of roll. It's not really a fair restraint to put on someone, or constraint, if you're playing an opposed game. Napoleon should have to get word of what he's afraid of up there. It's probably still almost as good, but it's not as good. I'm actually going to change my orders a little bit. I have Victor moving here and then waiting for dawn. I think instead he's going to wait till he's rested. He's going to wait till dawn because he's not going to have all his units rested to even move here. And that'll delay Poniatowski as well, but I think it'll allow me to have a more coordinated attack. Given that I'm saying, hey, I'm not going to make initiative rolls for these guys and just wander off into God knows where. Initiative makes sense when the commander on the field has the information to make the clever choice and violates his orders for that. Here, these guys, I'm just saying, don't have that. They really don't. He's following his current orders, so that's fine. He was to set up there to provide a defense because I know there's an army down here. You know, knowing that there's an army down here might be enough of a reason to go penetrating into here, though. And that's the kind of thing that, like, well, why would you make this restriction? Yeah, except that my decision is being made on these guys, and that seems unreasonable. Problematic, though, might be the kind of foot dragging that I'm doing here. Now, I was recovering fatigue levels that I want to recover. So it works out okay. But next turn, I could just cancel my orders. And again, because he's been under orders for enough turns, that again feels like I'm cheating in some sort of sense. The God's eye view creates realities that or creates game realities that just don't really exist in reality. Now that's just, you know, that's just the nature of things. And you could say, well, you're playing a game, deal with it. And I can accept that. To a large extent, the game does cover enough that, yeah, there's some stuff around the edges, just like there is with everything else. But the command and control and these kind of decisions are so important to me. And can have such a huge influence on the strategic balance of the scenario. Not only am I not sending him this way, I'm going to continue sending him on his current orders. He's got no reason to disobey them. I could see maybe rolling an initiative roll to see if I cancel orders. We'll think about that. Likewise, you know, just the same way I'm making up rules here. I'm not just trying to bone the French. I just feel that, you know, all this foreknowledge that I have is already like the fact that the coalition army is going to take a while to assemble. I'm already doing things that are ahistorical based on, you know, what I can see. And I certainly don't want to stretch that too far. And there's really nothing system-wise that I can impose to put that kind of thing in play. Anyway, that's going to get us to the Austrian side, or the coalition side of that midnight turn. Decisions are actually a really big deal because it's not easy moving through this crap. Of course, it won't be easy for the attack either, but it would be real easy to come running down this road and set something up and then create a much, much worse situation than the coalition was envisioning, which disturbs me, again, because the information just wouldn't be present there. As it stands, Napoleon ran back rather than trying to, not rally, but scoop up more stragglers to be able, and the fact that I gave Victor the delay until dawn means his force will be completely ready when he moves it in, before he moves it into position. It'll be rested. That's a big deal, Napoleon could have ensured that it's as rested as it, or it would be as rested as it is now, but that's fine. Looks like the Austrians are definitely all going to be wandering off map, not in good order. Some of them may be delayed even further, given that this is the AM turn of the next day already. I don't know, because I'm leaving at night, giving them some rest and whatever, but they're going to be paying an extra turn to get over there, I think. I sent the Kaiser with them, and that, he is only a Kaiser now. He's no longer, no, he's still calling himself a Kaiser. He's no longer a König. But that's because Austria is calling itself an empire, no longer a Holy Roman Empire at this point by any means. So this is the view, and we'll push to the next turn. But I got battery issues and rest issues. I really should have gone outside. It's a beautiful day. There's not going to be another beautiful day. I still got some time I could, but I didn't even go shopping, man. I blew it off, decided, I can lose weight by eating garbage, because garbage will be less attractive to eat. One of the things I want to hear, which is under the second level command radius, this statement. First of all, there's, this is where you have to check the command radius, whatever, which is 10 hexes for subordinate leaders, but 6, and that does not apply, but 6 hexes for units within a leader. I tend to probably fudge that a little further than I should, just because the commands are too big to achieve their frontage. So I'm like, well, if it's all linked together and everything, they can hold a line, But here, obviously independent units, okay. There are some in some of the games. For example, I think Napoleon's little command staff or whatever, detached from their parent corps in the range of another leader, are typically attached to that leader for the duration of the scenario unless stated otherwise. This is just the weirdest kind of thing. It's like, putting that in the rules as opposed to in some sort of sidebar or note or something of that nature makes it feel like this has some kind of weight of the rules. It's just the looseness of the way the rules are written, though, as opposed to anything else. It's not some kind of indication that, like, I can detach units or something. But I feel like I should be able to in this scenario. And, again, I'm playing solo, so I can get away with shit like this. Can you get away with shit like this and throwing restrictions and such not when you're playing opposed? Yeah, maybe, sometimes you'll be playing with people and you'll say, hey, let's use common sense and discuss when we're putting in position of some restriction, or if we want to suggest one to the opponent, because, I could see either before or after the fact of this movement being like, oh, come on, man, you don't know this shit's happening, because, it would be an incredible advantage to the French to go occupy this territory right now before the enemy gets there. And it just wasn't part of the plan in any level of what the French were doing. That could be a flaw in the French decisions, but if I had plans to move down here and defend this against that Bohemian, the main body or the rest of the body of the Bohemian army, that would make sense. But I never had those plans. So it would be kind of like, ask the person, hey, you know, were you planning on occupying this when they start to move down in that direction? You say, yeah, no, I'm reacting to that. Is that really fair? And if they insist, sure, you know, the rules back them up, but you might be able to convince them. What I haven't been able to find is the Imperial Guard rules. I don't know where they are. They're not in the optional. And I don't think that they're separated anywhere. Maybe they're in the scenario rules, but I don't remember them being so. I found where the rule is after much searching. It's in the Jena Auerstadt game. There's nothing in this game that says anything one way or another about committing the guard. This is somewhat problematic. Because, again, if the battle's not hinging on it, I mean, the guards can go around everywhere and do all kinds of stuff. I don't know how I'm going to cope with this. Maybe I'll look at the Waterloo rules, see what they look like. This game came out before Waterloo, but it's just in the Jena Auerstadt, it was the guard as a whole, which would mean that, you know, the infantry of the guard. You can commit the cav and the artillery, and they have a massed artillery thing there. I think in the Waterloo, it's the old guard that's specifically called out, which I had thought was the Jena Auerstadt situation. And now I'm just kind of like stunned. I don't know if I want to allow them everywhere, which is, there's no special rules on the guard here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, no. There's just a note about them that doesn't actually affect anything. It just tells you about their morale bonuses. But clearly, you know, committing the guard would have a tremendous effect, at least for the day that it's involved in. On the other hand, I don't know what kind of complexity I'd have to be introducing to create those roles. I had been assuming, hey, I can just park the old guard somewhere that I need to hold in case it gets attacked, and that's fine, in kind of a back area. But the way the rules are written, it's about, like, committing them has to do with them being attacked too, I think, if they're involved in fire or melee. And that feels a little too restrictive. If I've got them parked somewhere and there's a breakthrough, yeah, they would fight. And I just don't know what to do with them. Plus, I was definitely counting on the young guard being able to come down and fight. So I'll do some more thinking there. I did just find it in the Waterloo scenario. Not remembering too far back, this probably was one of my great disappointments with that set. There are no rules for the guard there. There's one where, hey, Napoleon didn't know where all the enemy forces were, so he didn't commit the guard early, and so you could have you can't bring the guard up until a certain point. And I don't remember if that was Waterloo or one of the other battles. It would have been Wav. I don't remember. Anyway, I'm not sure which one is which, Wav or Ligny, and maybe one of the chickens down there. I don't know if you can see them. But anyway, I'm really left with kind of I should just not enforce any rules on this. One of the problems is I was thinking, hey, well, you know, the reality is if you use the guard and they do fine, that's okay. You know, you can use them in pivotal points. The truth was they were used only in pivotal points usually. But those pivotal points could be either to shore up the French army and be used as a reserve that way, or to be the final breaking blow on the enemy army. Now, the penalties that are accrued for using the Guard in that latter fashion in the 3 battles in Germany scenario seem exceedingly harsh to apply to, yes, I want to just break the enemy. I kind of like more the Empires in Arms view of how the Guard is used. If you break the Guard, you're fucked. You know, if the Guard fails at some task, there's a problem. I'm kind of thinking more along those lines, where apply the kind of penalties if the Guard is committed and they do not accomplish their goal. But again, I don't know quite how I would work that out. So I may just leave them loose, but you may also see some kind of painful result on the French army as a whole if the Guard is repulsed, and I'll just make that shit up as I go, probably. So here we are at the end of the night. Got some units that I have to gonna have to get rid of their losses for. Not many. Victor, I think, and I'll have to look at Lauriston and Aguilar and try to see if any of theirs should qualify, but anything under Victor should be cleaned up. I've already done all but one, so I'll get that. Let me check the others. Yeah, we still got some of those. And they're going to start moving at this point. The French, Napoleon's and Murat have both issued a series of orders. They're all awaiting execution, either because, hey, wait for dawn, or in some cases, the orders hadn't reached yet. Well, Marmont's just got his orders, I guess. I should move Napoleon. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is as far as he can go. So we better go there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His horse is trying to catch up with him. Yeah. And they never get fatigued, man, because they don't have a corps. They're independents. Is that the old Guard there? Moved forward, I think. And yeah, Oudinot back there rested, just because. I'll be getting the rest of my Guard committed. I think this looks really awful for the coalition. They left a reasonable defensive line to come scattered in piecemeal into a position, you know, that might have been potentially better, but the horrible terrain's making it tough on them. On the bright side, Marmont's artillery is not able to get through any of this shit. I got to go back to a road to get it. Likewise, Poniatowski and Victor are going to have to channel their artillery through these little holes that the Prussians and Russians are using. So we may end up without much artillery to support this attack, which is a big deal in Napoleonic era. So that is it for this turn. I'll load this one up and come back with a recap, because I think that works well. I don't know. Nobody's told me it's good. Nobody's told me it's bad, so I just don't know. But a recap in order to position us for the next video, which will be the beginning of, hey, we forgot the big thing, the 15th. Yay.